Right. So like I promised some time back, today is going to be a lot of stories from startup founders, and we have with us Amit today. So Amit, one of the things that, in our conversation I learned was today you happen to be, the highest rated financial app in the world, right? Play Store 4.75, and in the world, right? And it's not just India. The other thing that you also told me is that, you're the third largest investing platform in India, which is very, very interesting. And all of this in the span of few years. Walk us through your story. What does Market Pulse do?
Yeah. So, just to give you a background of what Market Pulse is, it essentially sort of helps, as Mohan's already mentioned, it actually helps traders and investors take better and more informed decisions. So we basically want more and more people to sort of get into the markets, learn, earn, and sort of really prosper basically. We differ in a way where we actually only give information and sort of everything that they need to take their own decisions. We don't take decisions on their behalf, and that's very different from what happens in the space essentially. So for us, the whole point has been that we want our technology to sort of, a lot of people, millions of them, to actually benefit from this piece. For that, it has required us to really build like extremely scalable solutions, which are very, very cost effective, because almost 97% of our users actually don't pay us. It's only the 3% of the user which is up the food chain and which are really using those expert premium tools actually end up paying us. So now to be able to really do that, we needed to ensure that we build something which is really very sophisticated and still, have a lot of people basically use it. So to give you a sense in terms of, and in the context of this particular session, I think some of the numbers that we do will actually help you understand where our technology is and what we really do basically. So I think like I think we get roughly about like 1.5 lakh, sort of active traders every single day, but they spend about 50 minutes on the app every single day, giving us over like 6-7 million screen views. Now for that, our APIs, and this is financial markets, like everything changes every split second. So our APIs technically do about 50,000 requests per minute. And we've got like this streaming server which sort of gives out these individual codes as they're changing for every stock. That we probably do about like 5-6 billion messages every single day. And that's done in like sub-millisecond latencies basically. Any given point in the day you will have like, any second you would have about 25,000 concurrent users just logged in all the time basically. So, and we've got like another scaling system which actually does I think over 1 million algorithms that run every single minute, over like 600 data points. So there's just a lot of data moving in. They're really small pieces of information because it's a price code, but the amount of data that gets pushed from the exchanges, it's almost about like, 10 GB of data that comes in every day. Now when you look at 10 GB, it's like nothing when you look at video. But when you look at that a byte, the packet size is actually in bytes, then it's just a lot of data that comes in. So that's how sort of we've done it. But at the same time, if you look at how we've been able to do this, it's only been about, I think, a 3-member tech team. And our servers technically cost us about 1,50,000 a month. So you do all of this fancy business, but you have to do it with really limited resources because that's what you've got. And you have to sort of work around with just doing that.
Let's talk a little bit more. Right, so those are very, very impressive numbers, the monthly active users that you're talking about, the kind of people that you're servicing on a daily basis. And you're saying you're doing all of this with a 3-member tech team. And the other thing that you also mentioned is you have zero marketing budget, or at least for a long period of your existence, right? That's very, very impressive. What's the secret sauce to doing that?
So, I think it's said that, sort of lack of resources leads to innovation. I think it's true in our case, and I think a lot of startups again, they exist because of this, thing. So for us, because we've had like limited people, limited funds that we've raised, we have needed to sort of really rethink and be very careful in terms of how do we build the team, how do we build the company, the product, the business strategy, and every single choice that we make basically. It sometimes seems limiting that you have less resources, but I think it's worked in our favor because it sort of helps you and even pushes you to take that right decision. Now, technically, if you see the 3 things that has worked really well for us, one is we've been able to sort of really pick the technology which is best suited for a problem. So we don't really have a strong affinity towards one language, one platform, one technology. I think we do what is required to be done at that particular moment. So for that, I think today we have like Elixir, we have Golang, we have Python, we have Java, we have Julia, we have Ruby. So we're just like doing all of that basically, because every problem needs a different kind of platform and solution. Second, I think it's embracing change and evolution. I think in the 3 years, we've seen that we had to re-architect a lot of things, because you build something, you think that, okay, it'll get you to like 1 million. Like we're doing these algorithms, 1 million. Now next product is 200 million algorithms, what we're building. This is not going to work. So you got to just like keep evolving, and you got to accept it that whatever you do is actually probably not going to work somewhere down the line, basically. And third is, I think the whole team is structured to be a poly-skilled team. It's not just the dev team. Like we don't have a business analyst, we don't have a tester, we don't have a UX or a UI designer. So the whole team actually, every single person does 2 jobs. Even the customer support person actually partially does the marketing, partially does testing, partially does user research. So every single person is sort of poly-skilled to do like 2 things. So I think, we have 9 members, but they technically operate as 20, 25 maybe, because they have that many skills and they're able to do that. From a marketing angle, I think it's simple. You've just like figured that, okay, this is the problem, and you just go ahead and solve that problem. You have limited funds, so you got to figure out where you put it. Right. So we put all our funds and our time and energy into building the product. So once you do that and the product works really well and your users really appreciate it and you're able to nail that problem, then in that case, you get your organic downloads. Like 50% of our downloads today come from the word marketplace. So people are actually looking for the product and they're installing it. So we don't have to reach out. That said, obviously it's not a good idea to just rely on that. But then again, there is a right time for doing everything. And I think what ends up happening is, because you don't have marketing, and all these users are coming on their own, you got to really value who are coming. So we have had to really focus on plugging every single leak in the system. So last year we had like a 4-week retention of all our users that come in at about 20%. We've put in that effort because we didn't have funds to get in more. So we thought, okay, whoever is coming, let's make the most out of this. So we improved the quality of our product and our experience and everything, and today we've got about 35% retention. So technically we've doubled our retention. So we've got double the number of users without actually spending any money. Now maybe it's a great time for us to go out and really do. So I think marketing sort of hides those leaks, because you can just keep pumping money and your numbers keep going up, but you don't realize that everything is just falling off the bottom. So I think, so that's how sort of it has worked for us.
Sure. And I think you spoke about how you use a wide variety of technologies, tech stacks, programming languages. And considering that it's a limited size team, right? What's the framework that you use? So I think that's something that will benefit a lot of startups sitting here. How do you kind of decide which one to choose for the right problem? And what's relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow, like you mentioned, but what's your framework like?
So that's a tough question. So I think it's really, I think I can probably take a life example and be a little more spiritual in that sense. I think it's about just looking at the problem the way it is. Because sometimes what happens with the tech team is you have certain preferences, certain liking for a product, you like a platform, and when you're given a problem, you just want to use those tools to solve it. But you got to realize, and what ends up happening is when you start off right, it works beautifully well. But that problem is not suited to scale up to that. Like giving you an example, all of us, like 2 of us who started off with this product and all, we came from, a Ruby background, a Rails background, and we started building it in that basically. But then soon we realized that we can rattle our brains over it, but this is not going to get us the performance. It cannot get us a response time of less than 100 milliseconds, and it's not going to work for us. So we decided that, okay, let's try something else. And then what you do is you get into a spike mode. So you actually pick up a technology, you learn it really fast. You don't try to learn the breadth of it. You just try to learn that piece which is relevant for you for your problem. So you pick that piece up, you try it out, you see the success in it, you deploy it. So it has to be really rapid prototyping with production sort of, stuff basically. So like to give you an example, what we do today is we're sort of changing our system which actually does these million of algorithms. We're trying to replace it with something else. Now what we're doing basically is we're actually put that production in deployment. We're pushing all this traffic here, but this is not live, but it's getting all the real traffic. And now we are comparing the performance of the two basically. So I think it's really essentially like the openness that, there are these hurdles, and to, jump over these, you'll have to figure out what's the right maneuver basically. And whatever the tool is best fitted for it, maybe 2 or 3, so you got to spike them out. But you really got to, and we are lucky like in that sense because we have tremendous scale. You put anything out there, you'll get like lakhs of hits and you're able to really compare. So I think that's, it's just the nature of how you build your team. Like you have to be, just looking at, not being biased by what you're already, I think for tech, a lot of times what happens is, you have this and you're just worried that it's your core component. You cannot just change it. And business also gets really scared. But I think you need to have that courage to realize that this is going to go down the drain one day. So you might as well just fix it now. Because it's, as the tech debt increases, it gets more and more difficult to change anything.
Right. We'll come back to the tech debt piece. But you use DigitalOcean as the business, right? So could you kind of tell us how do you use DigitalOcean as the business and talking about the framework that you just highlighted, how does DigitalOcean fit in the scheme of things within your framework?
So I think, as I said, right, like for us, it's really building scalable solutions. So that we can do on any other platform. But for us, giving all of that sophisticated stuff for free out there requires us to really be like extremely cost effective. Like for example, we actually stream all of this 5 billion messages in sub-millisecond latencies to over like, so many handsets. We do that like with 8 cores. So one is obviously, building that technology which can actually do all of this with just, limited resources. But at the same time, so we've used everything. We were actually on AWS, Google, we've been on Linode, Voltar. We've used like a variety of, our team is actually DevOps engineers and we've done a lot of things basically. So DigitalOcean obviously was a little scary for us. We actually did not honestly trust, getting into DigitalOcean or any of these for production size, because for us the thing is, in financial markets, since these traders' money is at stake, they don't accept a downtime of even a minute. Like our servers don't go down, maybe 5 minutes in an entire month. That also potentially big, not because of us, because of things which are out of our control. So to move to DO was like a really big challenge for us. And my experience with DO goes back in 2012-13 when it's were really nascent. So they had a lot of issues that time because of the VM technologies and all of that. So what we did again, the same thing. We spiked out, we actually put 2 servers here and the rest of it was actually on GC. So we knew that both of them are, if these go down, we'll scale these up basically. But we ended up seeing that the performance on DO was at par and sometimes even better than what similar instances were on GC. And we were really like shocked by it. And that said, the biggest problem with the bigger providers was the hidden cost of actually bandwidth. You just cannot foresee what bandwidth you're going to, use. So we ended up having like thousands of dollars we had to pay just for bandwidth. So we paid almost like 60% of our cost was actually bandwidth and only 40% was actually the hardware that we're using. So we were like, this is just not working out for us. And because DigitalOcean gave us that confidence, we decided that, okay, let's move everything. Once we hit that, we moved everything. In now 4 months, I think we've had like absolutely no issues. So I think it's been 1/5 of the cost. And it's super reliable. So like we're decently happy, but at the same time, there are issues. There are issues with any VM technology for that matter. So I think what's important is to build your system to be fault tolerant. And if it is, and if it can auto scale and manage those VM issues, I think DigitalOcean is fantastic. We're very happy with it.
Thanks for that. So you also spoke about your funding experience, right? In terms of, one, with your seed round that you've raised, plus in terms of what you're looking to raise. Talk us through, and one of the other things that you also said is you would not raise funds for growth, but for a specific reason. I don't want to state that reason. What is that? Why don't you tell our viewers here?
So that's interesting. So, anyways, I think, maybe taking that second one first. I think the way we sort of look at it is, if you actually need like money to sort of even walk or, you really can't win the race basically. You have to get your act together to be able to really, like money should actually just propel you to move forward. Like if it actually becomes like clutches and you have to sort of use it to really walk, I think there is a bigger problem at hand. And there's a very interesting, like in January this year, we've been in that situation. So in January, I think we were at a situation where we had only 8 months of cash left. So for us, the pressure from investors was that just raise another round of fund, otherwise you're not going to exist basically. But we knew that we could do it right, but we just needed to find that little extra time and get it done. So we requested for a 3-month period and we got together and we said that, okay, we just need to make this happen basically. And that's when we realized that what we were doing was just not like, we had to think of alternate approaches. And then we decided that, okay, we'll move to a freemium model where we build depth in our product, which actually the experts can end up paying. And in 4 months, we put in all our energy to actually make that happen. And today we have had like a quarter which is extremely profitable. And now we have like 24 months to go with like nothing. So I think what this does basically, it helps you actually, sort of fix those problems that you have. Like if we had got money and if we had raised funds, we would actually never fix this problem. We would go down that route. What will happen is we would run out of that cash and again we will end up being the same problem. So, and just as a team, we like the fact that, sort of money is used as a utility rather than a survival mechanism. So, we sort of look at it that way. And I think it just works wonderfully well for us. From fundraising perspective, I think it's really fun actually. And it's quite challenging. At the same time, there are, it just shakes you up quite a bit in terms of emotional ups and downs, because there are a lot of rejections, a lot of acceptance, a lot of questions, doubts, a lot of things that come around. But I think what it does wonderfully well is it actually pushes you to refine your idea, your plan, because of the invaluable criticism that you see across the journey basically. But I think there are 3 things that we have sort of learned and which are like really valuable, when you get into fundraise. I think the first is sort of knowing what's important to you, your values, your principles, your vision basically, and having the courage to say no. Because everyone coming in will not understand what you have set out to do basically. So you need to have the courage to say that, okay, even if you're giving me the funds, but if it's not in line with where we are going, you're not the right person for us. Second, I think it's actually, how do I put it? So it's sort of negotiation, but I think a lot of us look at negotiation as bargaining, but it's actually not that. Like it took me a while to figure that out, but I think it's actually about finding that sweet spot where everybody wins, where you founders, with the team, the company, and it's for the great, because if the company succeeds, everybody is going to succeed. Right. So it's like really critical to, look at both these aspects. Third most important thing which worked extremely well in our favor is we've been patient, said no to investors. We've got the right kind of investors which actually gave us a free hand. Because I think before you get into a series B or something like that, I think for the first 3, 4, 5 years, you need the ability to pivot. So if you're very KPI driven, you're very timeline driven, and you become very strict with your plan, I think it just doesn't work out. So I think, that kind of flexibility is something, but anyways, if whether you want funds or you don't want funds, I think you should just go for a fundraise. Because that experience will really hit you on the head and tell you that, dude, get your act together. Because there's just going to be a lot of questions out there.
Sure, it's one element of validation that, at least investors have, right? Great. So one of the things that we spoke about is, how things have worked well. And I'm sure in this journey, there are a lot of things that haven't worked well or hasn't gone as per plan, right? So what are some of the lows, what are some of the learnings that you've had from those, right? So that our audience can benefit from it. Can you share any of those?
Actually, there are a lot of things that don't work. Every day there are so many things that don't just work out. Like one, for instance, for example, is we actually thought when we started off, and we were getting extremely amazing growth and everything. So when you get into a market, it's very easy to say this is $1 billion market, there are millions of people out there and they can all use this product and all. But you soon realize that what you're building, you cannot look at that big picture. When you start building, you have to build brick by brick. You have to take one persona in mind, you have to understand that customer, solve his pain point, then broaden your scope. You can't start with that. Like it's great to pitch from that perspective. So we started off with the fact that, okay, there are, Money Control has 5 million users, so we'll build a better product and we'll get to that. We have a wonderful product, much better product than them, and they spend a lot more time than, most of those. But when we looked at that and you just get into it, it doesn't work like that, because we soon realized that our product for us was for a niche category. Our focus was very, very different. We didn't want to be a news platform. So now you soon realize that, okay, you've looked at getting to 1 million, but that's not going to happen because your market is smaller than what you expect. Yes, as you grow, it will happen, but it won't happen right away. So it's very important to so for us, that's what happened in January. Like we were a free product because yes, it was built on economies of scale, but you soon realize that needs to happen. But at the same time, you need to find other revenue sources. And that's when we pivoted to a freemium model, because we realized that because it was a free product and because you were building breadth, people who are experts in the market don't get attracted to your product because there is no depth in your product. So then you build depth. Now what we've got is a nice pyramid. You've got experts, you've got intermediate. So your product is now really evolving in the direction that it needs to evolve. So I think one of the things is you just need to be like really open and flexible. And this particular idea in January actually came from a user researcher who's not even part of the co-founding team. He is the one who actually brought up and said that this needs to change, like we need to do this basically. And at the critical juncture, to actually pivot completely from what your vision has been for 2.5 years was a big decision to take. But then we evaluated that and we said that yes, let's get this together. So I think from my perspective I've seen is I have grown over the 3 years to realize that it's very important to not just make, it's important to give the people the power to speak, question and participate in the larger scheme of things basically, because you as founder are very passionate about something. You as founder know this is the way to do and you just don't look at those other ways because you're too much into your own world. So it's very important to like constantly be a good listener, be a good observer, take your decisions because they will never see the world like the way you see them, and that's why they follow you. That's why you're a leader. But at the end of it, you can't just go on your path. You will get these inputs from rest of people and you need to evaluate it. So I think I have really learned to sort of let go of things that I strongly believe in for the greater good of this thing. And I think that's something that I have changed personally over being hit on the head by multiple things along the journey. But I think that's been a phenomenal experience for me.